Mhm.
All right. Thanks for being here today. Will is out on tour,
Mm.
and just in conversation with him, I've shared with him that in future I would love to um, facilitate some group conversations and potentially have some group coaching conversations. And he asked if I'd like to step in while he's out on tour and do this kind of as a way of, like, serving me, like going for, and I was like, that is incredible. Thank you so much. I would love to do that. So here we are. Um, Before we kind of get going for today, which is around the want versus the how to, I'd love to take a couple minutes and talk about last week, Game versus Shame. Jeff and Sean, I know y'all weren't with us last week. I don't know if you had a chance to read the content, but Karen and Chris, just curious what popped for you this week, and also Jeff and Sean Fita too, because what you were saying, Sean, about your movement, and it's all about gaming that, right, and making that fun. So I'd love to hear how you noticed the concept of gaming something and playing with it and looking for the easy. Were there
Uh,
moments this week when that kind of flagged for you?
you were asking me and who else?
Well, anybody who wants to feed in.
Oh,
I know we
oh,
talked
okay.
about this last week, and some of us were
Yeah,
here, some of us weren't.
yeah. This just briefly, this concept was not new to me even before I read it in Chandler's book, because it's out there. It's you can even see it referenced in clickbait headlines about how to up your motivation, or those 5 point, you need to know this first, those kind of emails. But it's you know um, let's see if I can let's see if I can put my climbing shoes in the car. Let's see, all I need to do is put the climbing shoes in the car. That's all. Then all I need to do is get in the car. Then all I need to do is start the car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until I'm in those days that I go to the climbing gym and I'm not feeling it up front. As soon as I get in there within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm stoked. but, but, and I think I also referenced in the call last week, like, um, you do, and this, I think this is actually relevant to the chapter that we're talking about today, but that performance coach that I like a lot, Brad Stulberg, you, um, you don't need to feel good to get going. You need to get going to have a chance at feeling good,
Hmm.
or feeling good, or accomplishing X, Y, or Z, whatever. Um, Gamifying and yeah, it's again and again. I had uh, again and again. I come back to this idea of what would it look like if it were easy. And Laura and I did one of our big jobs last week with all these lovely, noisy, clamorous people that we work with, and getting them, keeping everything moving forward, keeping I I wear a few different hats on this job, and so it can be a lot to manage in the moment. Running the sound checks, stage managing while we're working with the engineers. But it's like, again and again, I keep coming back to it. First of all, yeah, this can be easy if I don't let my emotions get involved, or if I try to just remove the heat here. We're all working towards the same end. And the other thing is, like, um, holy shit, I get to do this. I get to do this. I can't believe, it's a great place to be, and such a privilege to work with these people, even when it gets really difficult. Um, so by constantly reminding myself of that, it definitely helps motivate me and keeps me going. So I guess that, I don't know if that answers the question from last week, but there's a natural continuity here, and I have experienced them both in the last week for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, that's brilliant. May I ask a question on that? Just
yeah.
something that popped up. How did you constantly remind yourself of that last week?
I, it's um, I exhale. I take a deep exhalation, and I've been doing this for several years now. When I feel like my chest is getting tight and it's getting a little intense, I just let out that deep breath. And the more I've done it, the more habituated it's become, and most times I don't have to think about doing it. Sometimes I need to like actually, like, hey, wake up, or step outside, um, and stand in the sunshine for 45 seconds. Um, change change the physiology,
Mhm.
and that helps me reset in those moments.
Mhm.
It's a practice, obviously. Sometimes I forget, but most times I remember.
Yeah. And it sounds like it starts with noticing the tension and
Yeah,
knowing what you need.
noticing that I'm breathing,
Yeah.
taking shallow breaths. I'm not properly oxygenated,
Mhm.
so my chest is tight. My brain's like, hey, what's going on? Doesn't feel good. Yeah, I guess it comes down to that. I try to notice when my body isn't feeling good, and shake it out, breathe, whatever. Um, Sean, I would defer to you on on this stuff, resident expert.
Yeah, yeah, and it is. It's and it was while you were talking there, Chris. It's that whole even with the breath work. I suppose linking last week with this week is you can kind of add that playful element to it. As such, it becomes something that you can play with, and as part of the movement, kind of become aware of how sort of the body kind of breathes us in that sense, and we know then
Yes.
we're kind of tapped into it.
Yes. Yes.
Which
And
is brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
and it's funny because it can happen anywhere. Like one moment I remember from last week, uh, this group that Laura and I perform with a couple of times a year. It raises money for mostly for children's charities, and this last event last week was raising money for Alice Cooper's School of Rock in Phoenix. And part of the first event was we perform, the kids have Q&A, and then the kids get up there and they play with us. And sometimes one kid, sometimes three or four, and it's very chaotic as it's happening. And I'm up there sort of stage managing, and the kids get up there. I'm helping this dude plug his bass in so he doesn't blow up, so he doesn't pop the PA system. And by the time they started, I was up there, and it was so loud. I mean, like punishingly loud. And I'm right next to the kid. And at one point, I actually tried to discreetly, just because I forgot earplugs. I didn't have them with me. And I just sort of held my ears in the midst of all that noise. It was just, I was still able to just be, let that breath out and drop right into it, and just be right there until, it was a big happy event. It wasn't like it was anything, anything, certainly nothing scary, but it was a lot. It was a lot of sensory overload. And it's still possible to get to that place.
That's real cool, isn't it?
It's helpful to hear that really tangible example and reminder.
Or it could be the two guys behind us on the plane just yakking for 3 hours at the top of their lungs for the flight home last night too. But it's possible. Little white noise in the earbuds, and then let it go.
What else? Anybody else have something around the gamifying?
Yeah, mine hasn't been so much about the gamifying. More to do with the lack of shamifying.
Yeah.
Because I hear should, and I'm like, antennae are up, should. I'm shitting all over myself, and I'm always going on, oh, it's judgment, judgments are perceptions, very in my head, very much like I understand it. This is what I do with my clients. You know, I'm all over that. And yet, when you've got your own blind spot for your own stuff, I was seeing it as a judgment based on what I wanted to have happen and then what didn't have happen, and a little bit of frustration and annoyance and a little bit of, well, no, I didn't see it as shaming, but there was shame there and I didn't realize that there was. So that was really interesting. And as soon as I took out the emotion of shame, there was still the judgments of I planned to do that and I couldn't do that, and I wish I'd been able to do that. That was my plan. But at the end of the day, these things happen. It's not my fault that it happened, or things didn't happen. And as soon as I took the emotion out, all of the thoughts just went. Literally didn't give it a second thought. And it wasn't going to make any difference because that week is gone. You know, my week of being ill is over. I can't get it back. There's no point in, you know, moaning. I mean, the idea of like moaning at yourself and hoping that you might cheer up about it, it's ludicrous, isn't it? And I didn't realize how much I do that and that I was shaming myself. Only in certain areas, because in some areas I'm fine, but it's in the really important ones to me where my blind spots are. So that was really useful.
Yeah.
So I'm no further forward than I was, but I don't care. And I sort of know I'll catch up because you can do kinds of stuff really quickly, can't you, when you're
And
on
maybe
it?
you are farther forward because your energy is different. And you can do
Yeah.
it a different way.
Well, it's possibility now, isn't it? It's all possibility rather than looking backwards. Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
What, realizing you were in the should phase, what made you want to take the emotion out of it?
What made me?
Yeah, like what
Because,
signaled for you?
well, it was because reading this made me realize that I was shaming myself when I hadn't really thought about the shaming. And that was the difference between having a very logical thought, I planned to do that and I didn't do that, and I'm frustrated because I wanted to do that, and shaming myself, blaming myself, thinking myself less than because I didn't do something, even though I understood why it wasn't possible or wasn't sensible. I could have done it. I could have practically killed myself, but that would have been silly. So, yeah, it was the power of the emotion behind the judgment that really surprised me.
It sounds like too, your awareness of it, because it was right there in the reading. It was kind of top of mind, like
Yeah.
it was there.
Yeah. Well, you can't do anything without awareness, can you?
Mm.
You know, it really helps. That's the first
Mm.
thing, isn't it? And that last week's chapter showed me the shame element of what I'd been saying to myself.
Be curious to hear as you continue to notice and choose to take the should out of it, how that does, if it does, just playing with the concept of doing things in a lighter way, and if that helps you kind of take a different approach with
it's
it.
the could, isn't it? It's replacing the should with the could.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even that, because I'm aware of hearing myself say should. It was more, it wasn't so much I acknowledged that I wanted to do that and didn't do it. It was the shame of it. The little things that I was telling myself about myself, what I was, who I was as a result of not doing the thing because I was ill.
Mhm.
which I had just sort of missed before.
Hmm.
I was looking at it a little bit more intellectually and less emotionally.
And I'm curious too, and this kind of links into our choice for today, in taking the shame out, for myself at least. Because I can relate to that as well. And taking the shame out, how that shifts the energy around it. And it kind of leads to wanting to do it more, potentially. That's where like if we're talking about want to and how to, I'm curious, like if there also is some connection between like the should and the ruminating around it, and the waiting for like the how to, kind of like what you were saying earlier, Chris, like waiting until you feel right or you feel good to kind of, it's the rumination of it, how that connects to sitting and not actually moving forward, and then it shifts to the want to, how that opens things up. Are we okay to shift this conversation into?
Yeah.
Can I just add a couple of things that popped up for me while you were talking through this thing? First of all, the breath. I just think it's so incredibly powerful, and so many people don't appreciate it. When I take the first breath, I meditate every day, and when I take the first breath, I'm just so deeply not engaged with anything. I'm just being, and it's just like, wow, that's amazing. And it's the same every time. And then when I go into the meditation, it's just so calming and peaceful, and just totally underestimated, as well as exercising the diaphragm and everything else if you're breathing correctly and keeping your body clean and all that sort of stuff. So the breath, just to re-emphasize, for me, that's one of the most powerful things. Well, sort of helps keep us alive, doesn't it? And then when you said, Karen, that you just got on with stuff and you didn't really care, it brought to mind doesn't matter. So last year I did a newsletter recently and talked about an situation last year. My wife's from India, and we went to an Indian wedding, and a couple of my nephews and I were looking at a whole load of stuff as we sort of prepped for the this was the engagement. The wedding was this year, the engagement, and so much stuff cropped up and everybody was worried about it. And then we realized actually it doesn't matter. And this thing about accepting what we do and letting go of some of the outcomes is so powerful, to the extent we had some doesn't matter t-shirts printed up. But the interesting thing is that, do you know Sarah Louise, who did Domino a while ago? She's a country singer, and she did a couple of Dominoes probably 4 years ago. She released a single last week called Doesn't Matter, and I didn't know she was releasing that. She didn't know I'd done a newsletter, and she didn't know I'd had t-shirts printed, and she's had some t-shirts printed that says Doesn't Matter on it. And the little text she put on her Instagram post sort of encapsulated everything that I talked about, and it's just great. And the more it brought it all back to me, that so much of what we worry about doesn't matter. You know, if we do things with the right intent and we believe it's the right thing to do, then most things really don't matter. Now, there are things that matter, but there's not a lot really. And then just the third thing is in terms of play and movement. I think most of you know now that I've got a new grandchild. He's 2 weeks old. And we are embracing all that. The play, what I said to my wife was, this is just an amazing opportunity. He is a blank piece of paper. He's nothing. When he was born 2 weeks last Saturday, he had no influences, maybe some genetic influences. But we went to see a guy called Sir Robert Winston, who invented test tube babies. And my wife said to him, is it nature or nurture? And he said, without doubt, it's nurture. There's some stuff in nature, he said, but without doubt, it's nurture. So we've got an amazing opportunity to learn and create something really amazing, and just sort of, I guess, from an unemotional side, track it and see what happens. But most definitely the movement and the game already, and he changes every day. There's something, as you'd expect, changes every day. But the gaming and the movement and everything else that goes with it is just so apparent. And it takes me back to the mind of a child, which I think about often, because we get all that beaten out of us so quickly if we choose to allow it to happen. And we don't have to. We can be children in an adult world, and it creates opportunities. So just a few things that popped into my mind as you're all talking.
Thank you. And congrats.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful spot to come from.
Yes, congrats, Jeff. And I'm a medium, by the way.
Okay.
T-shirts for everyone. Oh, it feels right to segue from there to want to, right? How that energy opens up so much. Want to. Who would like to kick us off? Oh, Karen. Take it.
Yeah, and I don't even have to drive anywhere, so I'm really getting in there. So there's two things that just really struck me. Number one, you know, he said the two things that motivate him, it's the carrot and the stick. And I was thinking about necessity being the mother of invention, and how no choice is a real driver. And there's a couple of people that I've had the privilege of speaking to who are new coaches who have taken the world by storm. They're not the world by storm, but they've done really, really well very, very quickly. And it's because they didn't have an alternative. It had to work, so they made it work. So I think that's really important. I've always thought that giving yourself an out is like a losing strategy. Because you will always, it just helps you to take the path of least resistance, which isn't always the one that's going to bring in the big wins, even though, you know, obviously they can be harder, but well worth achieving. So so I just wanted to sort of like mention that, because I'm aware of when I've got a fallback position, I have a tendency to use it. Or to even look for or to look for a fallback position, rather than to put my blinkers on and go hell for leather. And I'm quite capable of going hell for leather. I've done it before, and I've achieved masses being like that. So it's not like I don't believe that's possible, but I'm aware that there's a tendency, like water, to take the easy route. And sometimes I don't think that's, you know, we should notice that. And the other thing that I personally find is with the want, going back to the want and the don't want, there's something that I want to have happen in the future, but I don't want it now because I've got other plans right now. So I literally should be just forgetting them, shouldn't I? Like, I'm not doing them now, so I don't even need to worry about it. But I'm not forgetting them. I'm thinking about them, and then I'm making up a whole story about, oh, but you know, when I'm ready to take the action on that, will I be able to do it? Well, I know how to do it. Perhaps it's not for me. Perhaps that kind of success isn't for the likes of me, and perhaps I would have had that success already if I was going to ever have it. You know, all of those ridiculous stories, when I've never tried to do this thing before. I don't have any evidence to say that I can't do it. And So hold on, I'm just gonna see what I wrote down. So I was saying, like, I've actually have been wasting my time talking myself out of dreams, but I'm not doing just because they are not my priority now. That doesn't mean they're not very important, but I've got a priority and then something has to happen first. And that is where I have to focus. And if I don't want it yet, which I don't, that doesn't mean, you know, anything other than I have got something else that I want to do first. Once I have done that thing, then the inspiration will come, because then the want will be there. And I have to just keep reminding myself that I don't need to talk myself out of it, because I can't see how to do it now. I can't see how to do it because I don't want to do it now. I'm not going to be ready to do it till September. So why don't I just park it and stop even thinking about it? What a waste of time even thinking about it is. So there's a bit of shame even going in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Which is totally ridiculous. Yeah. So that's something, you know, like, I'm aware of thinking so many, I'm now probably repeating myself, of almost talking myself out of the possibility of things because I've not done it, but I think I've done it, or I've done something a little bit like it. And then, so I think I know what I'm talking about, but I don't really, because I've not done that exact same thing.
Right.
So it's not relevant to cross-pollinate those ideas and then think that I can't do something when I have never really tried.
May I do a little digging here? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, there was a bit I underlined, made notes on page 100. Because achievement is about movement. It's not about rumination.
Mm.
And when you talk about wanting to do something and not wanting to do it yet, how will you know when you want to do it?
It's because there's a practical thing that has to happen.
So, okay.
And that's all it is. It's
Yeah.
not a,
So it's not even in your
I'll be ready when.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I've got
It's a thing.
strategy. I've got a
Yeah.
plan for my year, and I need to, like, I can tell you what it is. I need to clear my parents' flat and sell it. Literally, I am busy enough now that I don't need to be any more busy. It is not the time to be even more busy, because I'm struggling to find the time to do that. But that has got to go for very many reasons. It's costing me money. It's holding up a place that's perfectly good that someone could live in. You know, my dad's been dead a year now. It's time to go. It needs to go. And also I need to get rid of it.
Right.
I need to release myself from the burden. I expect Chris really helped me. He was helping me to see it as unburdening. So that I've gamified the actual process of clearing, because it feels very positive now. I'm unburdening every time I go around there and get rid of stuff. So it's a positive thing rather than a, oh. So but that's why it
Yeah.
isn't. I know what you're getting at, because in the past I have been a little woolly. You know, there's been some things where I haven't known if I've really wanted it. And I don't know how I've managed to sort out my life that I work behind the scenes in a theatre. How did that happen? It just happened. I love it. And I was thinking, I am literally living my best life. I have chosen this, I've created this, and I don't know how it happened. So I'm all for the power of just like being in the world. And yeah, I love the theatre. And I didn't even know I loved the theatre as much, because, you know, I'm a rock musician. Like what's musical theatre to me? Don't even know some of the songs. But yeah, just how I've just done stuff and it has arrived and I'm thinking, I am so in my element. So it's almost like, obviously I did things without knowing where they were going to lead, but it was my heart speaking. So
what's your heart saying now? Knowing that there's a time for that, what do you want right now?
well, right now, I want to unburden myself of this flat and all the contents.
So knowing that there will come a time when you're ready to sell and do that. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that's September.
Well, no, I need to sell it first.
Okay.
I know I need to get it ready to sell. So I'm hoping that will be a bit sooner than that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm going to do some plotting and planning and really being clear about what I want to create and the details around it so that I don't stumble into the next thing, because I'm very good at launching myself into stuff and then thinking, whoa, and then I've got something not quite what I wanted. So I am going to do strategic work first, which is so not like me. And then I'm going to take August off. I am not doing anything in August. I'm going to rest and have a brilliant time with my daughter.
So it sounds like you do know what you want, and it's just a timing. There's like a timing for everything.
It is a timing thing, but
yeah.
And the thing that I want to have happen, and it's all to do with my lifestyle. I did want it, but I didn't really want it because other things were a priority. I wanted it, but my parents were really ill and needed me. And at the end of the day, even though I didn't really want to have to go round there 6 times a day, there was no one else to do it. And I wouldn't have been happy had I not done it. So, who wants to deal with some of the stuff you have to deal with?
Right.
At the end of the day, I still chose to do it. That was still a priority for me. And I'm happy that I did. I've got no guilt. I think I would have felt guilty if I hadn't stepped up, because they were great parents. So even then, there was a want, even if it didn't feel like a want.
So what's it sounds like there's something that you want and that you're kind of like resting in a little bit as you go through the next bits to do the things and clear the things that you need to clear. Like how can you remember that that's like in doing the things that you need to get done, like that's the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, that's my it's my driver for getting this stuff done.
Yeah.
Because it's in the way, and I the quicker I'm the other side of it, happy days.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and that'll give you the momentum and the energy and the want to like clear this. Yeah, that's beautiful. Anything else?
Not yet, but
Not
there
yet.
will be.
There's more.
There will be. As soon as
Brilliant.
someone else starts talking, I'll have other ideas.
Brilliant. Sounds good. All right, Sean, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Hello there. And you know what? Loads of stuff has come up from the stuff Karen was just talking about there, and from Jeff, sort of talking about his grandchild. It's those of you who know me and have had conversations with me know that play is a key element of of my my goggles of life. And it was really interesting. One of the things that I wrote down in relation to this week's thing of want to versus have to is that children play because they want to. not because they have to. And it strikes me that that having that childlike approach to things is what really kind of unlocks the joy in what we do, because it's something that we're doing because there's a genuine want to do something. You know, it's you know, I've never seen it where somebody has to sort of say to a child, "You have to go and play now. Yeah, I beseech you, go and play." And it's kind of like the kids are like way ahead and they're off and they're running and they're doing. And I always talk about it in a playground, and it goes back to the movement stuff and the fun side of things, and the linked to last week's sort of the game side of things. Children don't plan that out. They don't kind of go, right, okay, so I've got 10 minutes on the swings and I'm going to use this particular skill to swing and kick the legs. And then when my 10 minutes is finished, I'm then going to kind of have a 5-minute lolly ice break, and then I'm going to go on the roundabout, and then I'm kind of, and then they come up with a battle plan for what they're going to do when they get to the park. The kids just go, right, oh, look at that. And then off they go and they run and they do and they play. And then when they're fed up with that, they go to something else. And I was like, yeah, that's it. And the game versus shame stuff really kind of came to the surface with that. And again, we were talking with the stuff with the movement is that's kind of some of the things that people really shame themselves around. Oh, I should have done my workout today, or I should have done meditation for this long, or I should have been for a run, but I didn't have the time because I was sorting out stuff. Rather than kind of look, this is the way that the cards have landed today. How can I kind of build stuff in? When would be that little 5 minutes that I can kind of sneak off and move behind the curtain where no one can see me, or while the kettle's boiling, just kind of like have a little bit of a dance in the kitchen, or so that kind of that whole want to and have to thing. There's real kind of differences in energy around that for me, and it reminded me of something I listened to a couple of months ago. It was actually a Bob Proctor. He was being interviewed by somebody, and this guy went. He was talking about sort of law of attraction stuff that he does, and you can't, if you really want to be successful, you'll be successful, and it's based upon want rather than kind of not knowing how to do it. And this guy went, yeah, well, there's no way I'm going to play football like Tom Brady. He went, it's just never going to happen. And Bob Proctor turned around. He said, "Oh, you're right." He said, "Because you don't want to play football like Tom Brady." And the guy's like, "What do you mean?" He went, "Well, if you wanted to, you would do. You'd move heaven and earth to get to playing at that level." He said, "Because that's what Tom Brady did to get to the level that he got to. He wanted it that bad. He wanted to achieve this thing that he did it, and the pathway led to that." And he said, "The reason you don't is because really you don't want to, And I was just like, "Ooh, that's really interesting." And then that led to another thing, another one of Steve Chandler's, where he talked about the commitment versus intention. And people talk about being committed to doing something. And he's like, "Oh no, that's not commitment. That's an intention. Oh, I'm committed to winning a medal." And he's like, "Well, no, because that's beyond your control. You've got an intention that would be nice. And then by going through the process and by enjoying that process, the outcome can be that you win a medal, So it's kind of there's a lot of talk around sort of commitments and being committed to things, and I guess with the kind of the the play and the gamification thing. The gamification for me kind of is more representative of the intention side of it, because then it's the journey. We intend to do something, so there's an intention there, and then rather than being tied to this mythical thing at the end, we can get there, but it's enjoying the journey and the joy of the journey that then will get us there. Because if we're not enjoying that bit, then we're less likely to get there, you know. And then one thing I wrote down, because it just popped into my head, and that's how I roll, was with this one, it's kind of like we're trying to encourage people to be life magicians, and they create the life by waving their magic wand. They wave the magic wand. I'm like, that's it. It's because you want to, you know. So everybody's got a magic wand. That'll get you where you want to go.
That's amazing. And I love what you said too about the kids playing, like they don't have an agenda for playing or an itinerary, right? And they're experimenting along the way, right? And that's the ease, and that's the play, and the dots connect kind of to each other.
Yeah.
And
And it's almost what we try to recapture, isn't it?
yeah.
You know, how many times do we kind of go, oh, wouldn't it be? Remember when we were kids and we used to just, you know what I mean? How many times we start sentences with that, and it's like, oh yeah, and we used to just play, or you know, I used to love the summer holidays. I think even me and Karen sort of a while back, we had a conversation about how cool the summers were, because you just kind of ran out of the house and you'd vanish, and then you'd come back when you were hungry and you'd throw your tea down and you'd vanish again, and it was like and it was just, you know, the free, you know, the freedom in that play, you know. And I think as adults, because we become trained out of it, essentially, you know, we miss that playful element. We've lost sight of that playful element, you know. And that's kind of where the gold is in that, you know, when we're in that space and when we're in that feeling and we do catch it, because we know it's still there, that's when it reminds us of, yeah, this is it. This is what it's about, you know. When you're out, you know, I'm guessing, Chris, when you're out, you know, and you're on a climb and everything's just flowing and you're there and you're kind of like, this is it. This is as good as it gets in this moment. I'm just like, you know, rocking out on a rock, you know. Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. And that's kind of like how I love to approach the movement stuff, is just, let's just put games in. Let's just get people enjoying stuff again. And at first it can be uncomfortable for some people, you know, because they're like, hang on, 'cause we're adults now. We can't be doing this playing malarkey. It's like, you know, I can't be pretending I'm stepping through laser beams and kind of painting pictures with my fingers and stuff. It's kind of, what's all that about? But of course, you know, 10 minutes in, they've forgot how old they are, and they're kind of, you know, Peter Pans of the world. It's
Yeah. I don't know, what seems to be resounding really, really strongly, it's also tied to motivation too, right? Like he talks that bit about like, well, if you were giving somebody $1 million to do this, like how would that change like your desire to want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like letting go of a lot of the nonsense and grabbing hold of, and to Karen's point, what's really the thing you want that can like push you through, right? That bigger, like
Mm. Mm.
want with the big W, right?
Yeah. And it's actually almost a little bit like the, the gap and the gain.
Mhm.
That idea of,
Yeah.
do we kind of beat ourselves up because we haven't reached an outcome that actually we invented in the first place? It's like we made it up, and then we're beating ourselves over the head because we didn't reach something that wasn't there until we made it up. Or we can kind of go, well, actually, I got all the way here. I did all of this. Yeah, it's like the end of the X-Files. I made this. Yeah.
Anything else to be complete on that?
No, that's all good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that resonated with, or a couple of choices in that particular choice. Anyway, that resonated with me. But first, just looking at you, Sean, with your headphones on and talking about movement and play. My wife and I went to a silent disco last year, which we'd never done before. And it was at Kew Gardens, because that's really close to us. And it was in one of their hot houses. And we wondered what it would be like. And it was just the most amazing experience. It was packed with people of all ages, all backgrounds, just being and doing what they want with no shame, and just let ourselves go. And 3 channels, so there was the poppy channel, and there was the sort of trancey channel, and the laid back channel, and we just flipped between the two, and we just had the most amazing experience. And it was very much let yourself be, just do it. And actually, whatever you are doing, it doesn't matter, because nobody cares. You're just getting on and doing it. And we spend so much time. I'm going back to it doesn't matter, aren't I? Anyway, that's not what I was going to talk about, but it is. So the 2 things that resonated with me is, first of all, the guy that was recruiting, who thought he could not recruit in his organization, and just looking at things in a different way, taking a different angle on something, and all of a sudden, same resources, same people, he's got a bit of a waiting list for people. And it reminded me of when it's so hard to get bums on seats in so many things, whether it's a coaching group or whether it's a band doing a gig, and persuading people to come along and part with a bit of money. It's bloody hard work. When you look at it in a different way, and you don't beat yourself up because you haven't got 20 people, you've got some, then that's great. It's just quite liberating, or it is for me anyway. So I thought that was really nice. And then the other thing that resonated with me was the guy who said he wanted to do public speaking. And Chris, Sean, you mentioned that, didn't you, about didn't want to. So my wife picked up a book called Taming Tigers by a guy called Jim Lawless years and years and years ago. And he talks about all the tigers we got in our head, and as soon as we get close to doing something, these tigers jump up and say, you can't do that, I'm going to stop you doing that. And one of the things he quotes is, and he's most of the time he's doing public speaking workshops, is a guy came up to him afterwards and said, I really want to do what you do. And of course he said, no, you don't, because if you did, then you'd be doing it. And a really brief overview of the Jim Lawless story is that in a pub one night, somebody bet him that he would not be able to ride a horse in a televised horse race within a year. Never been on a horse before in his life. And it sort of takes you back to whether you can or whether you can't. Never been on a horse before in his life. And the bet was only 50 quid, so irrelevant. But what he wanted to do was do it. So he just asked people, and he learned to ride, and he learned to go on I don't follow horse racing, a track or whatever it is, where you go round and round and round. And the end of the story is he did it, and he's built a career on that, actually. But the point is, we stop ourselves from doing so much because we don't really want it. One of the things it persuaded me to do was one of my tigers is just asking for stuff, and it was. So one of the things I did was I contacted him and said, like to have a meeting, please. You know, it's a tiger, I'd like to go and have a meeting with you. So I met up with him in a hotel in Slough, and he was absolutely fine. It was great. And then I think once you start to recognize that what is possible when you ask for stuff, most people are really nice about it and they'll give you a hand with it. So, but there's a little video clip of Steve Jobs talking about this, which I'll post on the email thread. Most people don't ask. So one of the things I really learned from that, one of my tigers, is just ask. Another quick example was, I don't know if you know Liberty, the flagship department store in London. There's a massive department store, and there was a TV program about how it's run, and the guy that runs it, an American guy who ran it for a number of years and made a real success of it. And my wife said, God, I'd love to meet him. So I wrote to him. He said, yeah, come and have tea. So we went and had afternoon tea with him. He gave my wife this flipping amazing bag as a gift, signed the book. I bought a copy of his book downstairs, said, don't be a stranger in the book. Because for me, it just reinforces that anything is possible if you're prepared to really, really want to do it. And time again, I've proved myself right, because I don't want to prove myself wrong. So those are the two things that really resonated in particular, in terms of the want. And it's got to be something you want to do. And I think sometimes people kid themselves that they really want to do something and they don't. It's just a fantasy, or they've seen somebody else doing it and they think, oh, that'd be nice. But that's not enough. You've really got to want to do it. And when you really want to do it, you'll find a way of doing it one way or another. And don't beat yourself up if it doesn't quite happen as you want it in the first place.
Tons there. Thank you. I'm curious if, and I appreciate what you said about something you really want to do. That's it. If you don't, you don't. And the bit about the rumination, like how does rumination fit into that for you? What?
Ruminate as little as possible.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
it is just do it.
Yeah.
JFDI.
Yeah. Do you think the rumination's this like?
Yeah. And the other thing is to do it even when you don't feel like it. Put the work in even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
So I love running. Sometimes I get up in the morning and I think, I do a morning exercise routine as well, and I think, do I really want to do it? And then I do it and I think, yeah. Somebody else said something similar earlier.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, bloody hell, because a run for me is my thinking time. I don't listen to music. I think about stuff, because the movement and the scenery and the difference and everything else going on in my body is very creative for me. So I've found ways of remembering what's popped into my mind as I've gone on a run, and then I write it all down when I get back.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it I remember. So in terms of rumination, as little as possible.
Yeah. Do you think that's a sign that people don't really want it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as has been said before, if you really wanted it, they'd at least be doing something. You might not achieve it today or tomorrow, but once you've started, and you know the theory of movement or the physics behind it is, once it's started, it keeps going. You know, that's the energy piece. Will keep self-fulfilling prophecy. Things start to happen once you started it. If you're just sitting there ruminating about it and thinking about it, what's the possibility anything's going to happen?
Yeah. I wrote this other bit down. When the mind goes to the want space, which is like exactly what you're talking about, it tricks itself into clearing everything that's
Mm.
getting in the way.
Yeah.
And it's
Can I
clean.
just ask a question on that, Jeff? Do you,
Yeah.
when you said rumination is a sign you don't want it, do you think it's a sign of something we think we should want?
Well, you're shooting yourself then, aren't you?
Yeah. Do you think that that's why we ruminate on
Oh,
stuff?
well, I guess it could be, yeah. But the bottom line for me is that if you think you should do it, then you don't want to do it. You're doing it because somebody else has influenced you to think that you might want to do it. So you're taking on somebody else's pressure.
Or
You know, it's
possibly
this,
even your own idea of what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that's usually come from somebody else though, even though you might say, oh, that's what I think. We've probably been influenced somewhere to take on this burden that we don't really want. I did a course, a sort of a real life-changing program in late 1990s, just changed my life completely. And the trainer at the time said, we all carry around this bag of shit on our shoulders, and every now and again we come across something else and we chuck a bit more in there and it gets heavier and heavier as we go around. Well, why are we doing that? Why do we bother carrying it? Why don't you just empty it out somewhere safe so we're not polluting anywhere, and forget it and just carry on doing. I'm not saying don't take responsibility, because I believe that it's duty bound upon us to take responsibility for our own lives, and for me to support as many other people as I possibly can do to fulfill their lives and have the best life they've got. What is not my job is to take responsibility for other people to do that. Now, as a coach, we don't take that responsibility. We'll ask questions and we'll sow seeds and we'll say, ask the really good questions which enable them to move on. But very often with the should stuff, it's saying, oh, well, somewhere I've heard that, I've read it, I've seen it. I think I should be doing that because, you know, and that's what's happening a lot in the music industry at the moment. If you look at social media, for instance, all these young people are saying, oh, I should be posting on blah, blah, twice or 3 times a day. And even the social media platforms say, don't bother posting every day because the algorithms are going to catch you and it won't work. So do what you think is right in here for you, and then see how you can share that with other people. So does that sort of help, Karen?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to hear you talk
Yeah.
more about it.
I could
Because
talk all
yeah,
night about that
no,
sort of
well,
thing.
good. I'm happy to listen. Thank you.
And where are the shoulds coming from? I love what you said, Jeff, about are they your shoulds or someone else's?
Well, yeah, the other thing is the comparison, isn't it? When we compare ourselves to other people. That they can definitely.
There seemed to be a lot there. Do we want to keep going on that, or are we complete? Why don't we move on to Chris, and we can circle back and unpack more if there's there.
A word that kept coming to mind through all of this is balance. Because it seems like we have individual goals, there are things we like to do, we have hobbies, we have career objectives, family objectives, and all those things. What it comes down to, though, you know, if we look at that there's that phrase, there are many paths to the top, you know, and because I think it's entirely appropriate to set objectives for ourselves, whether they're logistical, like Karen cleaning out her parents' house, or they're career objectives, or if somebody wants to play like be as good a footballer as Tom Brady, you know, that's all fine. but we already have a Tom Brady. So it comes back to like, well, what do you want to do? What does success look like for you, and who do you have to be to not just to show up and do the work, and then stay attuned to when it is already happening for you and you don't even realize it because you're not looking at, you have the idea of what success is, but you've gotten distracted. And so, and we also live in this, we set those hard objectives for ourselves, but we also, in the digital era, and the attention economy, we want hacks and shortcuts. And now people, fine, save some time, whatever, but there does come that moment, well, you have to say, to continue to use athletics as a metaphor, like, well, you could try to figure out a hack to shoot free throws like LeBron James, or you could show up at every training session and just shoot 200 free throws like he does. So it actually does take work, but because we want to move through it quickly, because again, I think our minds are used to moving so fast through our own ideas and our emotions. And then we're scanning the landscape online and we see, oh, they're doing that, they're doing that. Hey, I want to do that. What's that? How can I do that right now? How can I do that next week? There's that. And then there's stepping back and not being motivated at all, or expecting I'll just manifest it and I'll sit right here until it shows up and manifest, right? That doesn't work either. So there's time to dig in and do the work. There's time to take it so far and know, oh, you know what? I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought this would be it for me. But it's taking me somewhere else, or it's not happening, and be willing to say, I better pause here, because then I'm going to start to get into a sunk cost situation, waste more time and resources and energy, and maybe, maybe this thing I'm trying to do is better done by somebody else. And I should figure out again, like, what am I ready to commit to, and what, and in the micro steps, like, what would I do if I didn't feel like I had to do it? That's a big clue for us, I think. And I apologize if I'm hopping around a little bit here, but I was making notes as you all were speaking. There's just so much good stuff here and so much nuance. But I think another thing that could happen, a pitfall, is that we set a certain objective for ourselves, and then when we finally get there, it's like, oh, okay, well, now what, right? And we just need to keep going, find a new objective. And I remember a time that one of the first outdoor climbs I did, when I was so it was also the Karen, the lead climbing, Karen, where you're installing your protection as you go, right? And so it was the first time I'd done it, and it wasn't, I think this was maybe only 80 feet, something like that, but it was high enough. And then it was on a pillar that was on top of a promontory that looked out over this beautiful valley, the Columbia Valley in central Washington State. And by the time I got up there and clipped into the last hold there, I was thinking, okay, now to get down, da, da, da. And then the voice in my head said, hey, bro, look around. Look around. This is fucking incredible. Are you kidding me? You got yourself up here, you're not even taking time to look at it and just sit for a minute and breathe and enjoy it, right? And I think that's again, when we're always like driving ourselves to hit our goals. It's just so easy to overlook those moments where we should stop and say, like, hey, wait a minute. And just like what I said earlier, I get to do this. I get to take notice of what's going on here right now. What an extraordinary moment. And we're right in the middle of it. And then the last thing I'll say is, yes. Two things very quickly. and because there's always a book, books, we love our books, right? There's a book by the playwright David Mamet called True and False. And he talks about when we get into the idea of the sunk cost and intention versus commitment. Do you really want to do this thing? Or are you kidding yourself? Like you were saying, Jeff, you know, maybe you don't, you think you do. Like, and he says in this book, he talks about how he says to acting students, you know, if you're thinking of the fallback job, you should probably just go ahead and do it. Like, because there's no, like, if you're not that motivated to stick with it through all the shit that you're going to go through, and the frustration and the lack of money and the uncertainty and like what, you know, just go ahead and do the thing, and it's okay. Like, it's totally fine. It's not personal. No one's going to shame you for doing that. But if you're going to stick around and like go, like, you know, then you have to, it has to be a thing you have to, it has to come out of you. And then the other book was, in terms of when to say no and change course, there's a really great book by Seth Godin called The Dip, about how and when to quit something. And the Godin book is very short, like all of his writing, you know, short, crisp, to the point. Sometimes a chapter can be 3 sentences. Chandler like. So yeah, there you go. That's what I've got.
Thank you. There was a lot there connecting to what you said in the beginning, Karen, too, about the backup plan, right? And what you were saying with coaches just starting out, like if they have no backup plan, that's what their sight's on, that's what they want to do, that's what they're doing. That was a beautiful connection. Chris, I wrote down one of the questions you posed. What would I do if I didn't feel I had to do it? Yeah, that was really beautiful.
They're not always money makers either. Like
Yeah.
I think we have to kind of free ourselves from that thinking and monetize everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's another pressure that comes at us in this culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we can set out with a certain objective of what we think is success. And if we're not open to taking a different path here or there, we realize, well, we might have been, you know, we might have just missed the turn, and that thing would have made us happy too. But we got too caught up in like, oh, the next thing, right?
That reminds me of what you said at the top of the call too, of just how you were thinking back to last week, and when you stopped and noticed the tension in your body and realized that that was telling you something, and you let yourself go there. And I love hearing that and what you just said as well. Like, what connections can you draw there between those two things?
You know, I think over time, it's always a practice. It's always chop wood, carry water. As they say, you know, before enlightenment and after enlightenment. Laura and I were just speaking about that the other day. But I think it's also a key of being quick to forgive when we fall out of it, or when we've stayed too long in that state, and quick to forgive ourselves, that is. But it's a matter of trusting, like but again, our physiology, if we stay in tune with it, can tell us so much about where our mind is at, and if a situation is suiting us or not, or if our emotions are trying to insert themselves over assert themselves as we're contemplating any particular course of action. They always want to jump in there and have their say, right? And when they do, again, if we're still enough, we can recognize when, ooh, okay, yeah, this isn't good. We need to shift perspective, shift the thinking here a little bit, until it feels like, oh, this is better. It's worth practicing. as much as I fail to do it.
And I'm hearing trust there really loudly too. Like how does trust factor into all of this? Trusting that we know what we really want. Trusting that we know when there are signals that we're not doing the things because maybe.
Yeah. Trusting that we might not really want what we think we do, and that's okay too. We'll adjust. We are intelligent beings. We can course correct, and we can rather than if we look up, we can realize, oh, I didn't expect to be curious about this thing because I thought I was going over there, but that path looks interesting too, huh? And test it a little bit, but be willing to let go of the thing that we thought we wanted if it means that the ultimate objective is that we are going to be a happy, healthy, successful person with a fulfilling life. Jeff and I we had a one-on-one call a month ago or so, and I think it was something to Jeff. I was saying about we could do that. I could do this. I like doing this. I like doing this. And I asked your take on that, and you said, well, I mean, it's all just about having a happy life, isn't it? I'm paraphrasing, but well, yeah, I forgot. Thank you. Easy to forget. Even the stuff that we feel like, even if it's attending to our health properly, right? Why are we doing that? Because we feel we have to, or because we want to be a healthy person and enjoy the privilege that comes to us, living the privileges that are afforded to us at being able to even have the choice to take care of our health voluntarily, when not everyone in the world does. That's what it's about. It's not about I'm this age, I should do this, I should do that. And that never works for me. Mm-hmm. So I just want to be a healthy person. This is a step toward being a healthy person, even if it's a little bit of a hassle in the short term.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh.
Complete on this? Karen, I saw your hand, and Sean, I saw your hand. Karen, is your thing related to what Chris said, or is it its own thing?
It's sort of related. It's
beautiful. I was going to check in with Sean and see, but I think y'all both might be related to Chris. So Karen, why don't you go first, and then we'll get.
So I would like to just think, what people think about. So Sean mentioned about being childish and childlike, and going for one thing, and so I've got in my mind, you can't steer a stationary car. You just got to start moving. And Chris started saying all that brilliant thing, so I don't need to say all of that about like being open to possibly going in a slightly different direction, because that's a new thing. I didn't even know that existed. Like with me in the theatre, that's not monetized. So I could make a little bit of money, but I'm loving that. And at the same time, I do need to pay the mortgage. And so, thank you. I'm going to get that Seth Godin book, because knowing when to stop, that's, I think, really useful. Because obviously it's the opposite to, is it the How to Win Friends and Influence People, when he's saying like, the people that just stop too soon. And there are certain things in my life that I carried on vlogging, thinking that I was just about to hit that vein of gold. So again, back to this balance of being aware, possibly holding your goals lightly. That doesn't mean not have passion, but be aware that they might change. And also be childlike and playful. And if you don't have some kind of strategy or plan, are you just going to be having a great time but not actually moving forward? Is there the risk there of not doing that? Because I'm very good at being a child, and I've never been one for strategy, which is why I'm trying to change things this year. I just wondered what people thought about, like, if you want to be, I remember George Best, he used to train with everyone else in Manchester United, and then they'd go and then he'd start kicking with both feet so that both feet are the same. He did more than them. So, there, and he knew what he was doing. That was a conscious decision to be equally good with both feet. So it doesn't matter where he was, he could nail the pass. So yeah, I just wonder what people think about like digging in and really going for it, and also holding things lightly.
And before I open that up for anybody to weigh in on that, I'd love to, that great question, Karen. And also, like, what can you let go of in the process to get there? And that connects back to what you were saying, Chris. When to say no, when to stop. I know y'all are on mute, but if someone wants to weigh in there, please feel free to.
It occurred to me that the question that popped up when you mentioned that, Karen, about the if we get caught up in and what if we're not moving forward, and the question that occurred to me, Will, was, so what are we framing as moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
What
I thought the same thing.
What does that look like? Because again, that can kind of get wrapped up in, I guess, the stuff that Chris was talking about of, it has to be, or moving forward has to look like this, or it has to be about monetization, or it has to be about organization, or evolution of self, or whatever kind of we attach to it. And it kind of like, and that just, I was like, I wonder what moving forward is. Because actually, if moving forward is kind of a number of successive days of really enjoying the shit out of life, then that's moving forward, in that sense that I'm like, yeah, I'm just kind of, winged unicorns have lifted me from my bed 3 mornings in a row. I'm like, yes, yeah. Like, come on, unicorns, let's blow them horns. It's gonna. That could be moving forward, and that was kind of what showed up for me. And again, it tied in with what you were saying, Chris, with the whole thing of the the life hacks and wanting to have stuff done, I suppose, as quickly as possible, or with the least possible resistances. And it reminded me of I've been watching some videos by David Bayer, and he does kind of sort of mindset stuff and what have you. And he was talking about comments that he'd had and people going, really enjoying your content. Yeah. And this one person that he picked up on said, yeah, come on, Dave, you're better than this. You've done all these things now and you've kind of hit a bit of a plateau because you keep saying the same thing over and over again. And he was like, if you want more content, go and see someone else because they'll just fill your head with all kinds of stuff that they say you need. He's like, this is what I deal with. And I'll just keep telling you that because it requires you to keep going back over it and then going back over it and then going back over it. He said, and that's mastery. It's like the old Bruce Lee thing, isn't it? Of the, I'm not afraid of the person who can throw 1,000 punches, but, one man who practices one punch 1,000 times. And he's like, that's what I'm talking about, of that. And like Karen said, the George Best stuff, staying behind afterwards and just putting the silent yards in,
And you know what seems to me too, Sean, and everyone, like if I when you asked that question, Elizabeth, I thought, or Karen, I thought, I'm wondering, like, okay, so how do we know in our play, what's happening when a child is playing? Well, I mean, it's led by its curiosity, isn't it? And can find one thing to the next. And so it seems to me that like if there's a curiosity fairy on our path, that really that's what we should be following. That's who we should be following, right? Because everything else will fall in behind it. Our joy, our the possibility of if we're meant to make money doing something will fall in naturally behind that. And we're led, like LeBron's taking those free throws. How can I make it a little bit better each time? It's micro movements. I mean, that's like that level of focus. So comes from curiosity, which is the childlike quality that Sean was speaking to. Might be a clumsy analogy, but that's all I can come up with to directly address it. Certainly true with music and playing music. Yeah.
We have 5 minutes left for our scheduled time. And I'm just curious what bits, we can all come off mute at this point and just make this more informal. What bits y'all are taking with you from this conversation? What's landing? What resonated? The words that I just wrote down right now from throughout the course of our conversation was slow down, trust, and curiosity, and how those all connect back to one. That's me. I'm curious to hear what popped for each of you.
Curiosity was definitely one of my words for today because that came up in my call with Bloom the other day, but also balance. And Jeff, I was really moved when you were telling your story about just ask.
Yeah.
I've many I forget, I can let my own emotions dissuade me from reaching out to someone about something, and yet I've learned time and time again in my life that yeah, it works. It doesn't have to work all the time, but when it does, you'd be really surprised at the results you can get by someone that we thought we would not have access to. We do, and they turn out, so love those.
I'll just put a piece in the chat. I don't know if it's serendipity or what, but you're talking about curiosity. I posted this out to a group of people I've been coaching this morning. I just came across it, and it says curiosity is the killer app. The people that are really successful are curious and interested, and they have a go at things and they play around with things, and it that resonated with me when I came across it this morning. So I just posted it out, so shared it in the chat. But yeah,
You mind reading that? What's in the chat, Jeff?
it says Gates, that's Bill Gates, succeeded not so much because of what they did in the end, but because of who they were to begin with. Curious. Curiosity is a killer app. This is a good lesson for leaders. Don't just tell people what to do, show them how to be. Instead of commanding more innovation from on high, reward and hire for curiosity. This way you build from the actual source rather than adding on another profit center appendage. So it's not all about the money. We're only as good as who we are. More be, less do. And I'm sure you've seen the Gates story of how his curiosity got him to where he was. And he just asked, yeah, was it Gates or was it Jobs? One of them, and he wanted to do, it was Gates, yeah. He wanted to do more coding, and he needed a particular bit of equipment to help him. So he wrote to the guy that there was the head of Hewlett Packard at the time, either Hewlett or Packard, one or the other, and said, I need this. And the guy said, yep, I'll send you one in the post. And then he invited him to go and have an internship there. And then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is having the courage and the curiosity to play around with stuff and see what works for you and see what works for other people. And if it does, it does. And if it doesn't, then there's loads of other stuff going on. Isn't there? It's like we're lucky enough to have an pretty well infinite world to play around with. So yeah, that just sort of struck me this morning and again this evening.
I love that. It reminds me of the playground analogy too. If like get curious, play with it. If you don't like it, go get a popsicle, go play with something else.
Yeah.
Take a popsicle break.
Yeah, that's it. We all need one of them. Or 5. Yeah. It's that phrase, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, or wouldn't it be cool to, you know, insert whatever. That you know, and I know we mentioned it right at the start, that whole, you know, coming from a sense of wonder for me is I think when we've got that, and certainly I know personally when I've approached things with that, they're just far more enjoyable and actually, you know, I guess kind of get more traction and better results, if we're going to use that as a term, than if I go in almost, you know, right, this is how I'm going to approach this. I'm going to be very kind of serious about this and plan this and do this and do, and then I get bored and or frustrated with myself for not being, you know, whatever, rather than just kind of going, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I tried this, or if that happened, or I wonder what would happen if it, you know, again, I just keep thinking of the kids, you know, when I was young and I tried to make orange flavored milkshake by adding orange juice to milk. Oh, I wonder if I can make some orange milkshake. Has no one ever done this before? And of course, when it curdled, I'm like, that's why no one's ever done it before, and it tastes awful, you know. But of course, you don't know until you kind of
Don't know until you try.
I wonder. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody? Chris?
Yeah, you know, could I ask, well, it's a sort of a comment and also a question, but do you all not feel, or have you all ever felt on this road, having these conversations with all these like-minded people, that, well, I don't know right now what I'm supposed to do with this, but boy, do I like who I'm becoming in the process. I don't know if I'm supposed to be, you know, making money from it, but I definitely know I belong here.
Definitely.
That has been my experience, and so I'm setting aside what am I supposed to do? How does this apply to my career and all that shit? I have to set that aside for now.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's that trust and inner going inside and inner wisdom too that you've been talking about. Like that feels like a continuous thread too, like that.
but in this case, it's so obvious because all the stuff that, for me, because all the stuff that I'm learning on this journey, I am already taking out and applying and playing with, and so yeah, it is keeping me curious, and even in situations where I would not have been before, and it's helping me deepen other. So I don't want to go on, but I assume that some or all of you might have had similar experiences with this too, because you've been at it longer than I have.
With you, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Keep exploring.
Wow. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, for
Excellent.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
taking the space tonight. Yeah.
Well done on your facilitation.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Very good.
Big show. On that, I'm going to stop recording.